All right, I am joined by John Bardis, CEO at Qorbi, and Joe Tran, advisor to Qorbi. John, Joe, welcome to Between Two Layers.
Thank you for having us, Carly.
Yeah, thank you.
Very excited to have this conversation and talk a little bit more about One Tap, which I know is your big game coming up. Before we jump into the game, would love to just hear, how did y'all end up here? Let's talk about your journey and Qorbi's journey getting to this point. Give us your backgrounds a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a background in tech, so 20 years technology background and 15 years in entrepreneurship. I actually started off working with blockchain about 7 years ago. Worked with several different protocols then, and it's because I have a company, a software development company that's about 13 years old, and we were kind of thrown into blockchain at first. We were like, "What the hell is this?" And we loved it, and I loved it. I fell in love with it, and at the same time, my family's very big into gaming, and today they still own an esports organization here in North America. And so it was just kind of natural for me to combine these two loves of blockchain and gaming together. Through the software development company, we were already building games for certain studios, and it was just kind of like a no-brainer. Let's make our own game. We had one that we had been kind of brewing on for a while. And so, so 2 years ago, we set out and said, hey, let's build a game. And we want it to be blockchain based and use some digital assets to kind of support our gaming system. And that's how it all came together.
Joe, same question to you. And I'd be curious why you're drawn to, indie game development, maybe specifically over, working with a big studio, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, a bit about myself from my side is that I got into blockchain around the same time John did. So I think around 2017, 2016, I believe. And I started consulting and advising multiple startups here in the US. And around 2018, I led me to Asia. So I was ping-ponging around from, anywhere from Tokyo to Singapore to the Philippines, doing the same thing, assisting and building up my network within the blockchain industry. And I'm a gamer, right? So that's just kind of in my blood, I feel like. But when COVID happened, that's kind of where I met John. And the height of the pandemic really helped to boost up our, just our passions of blockchain and gaming, right? And merging that together. So, always here to support what John and the team are building.
Love it. And so give us an overview here on maybe the Qorbi ecosystem broadly, and then One Tap specifically. And then I want to make sure we take a look at the game itself.
Absolutely. So Qorbi World is set up to be a 3-game ecosystem. It's got a primary collection, and the purpose for its collection is to set up a community around basically driving what the overall values will be for that ecosystem. So there's levels of earning, and we have a very unique way we run our earning system. There is DAO voting, which really drives things like changes to the games, future assets, partnerships, and there's also future franchise systems because the ecosystem is dedicated to competitive gaming. So, it's really dedicated to fun and competitive gaming, but competition is at its core. Just like I said, like my family's been in esports for a long time. We love competitive gaming, and it's very natural for us to be a part of that. If we get lucky enough and our game is loved enough by fans, it'll become what's called today an esports game, right? And so if that happens, then those people who are the primary holders of our community NFTs will have first access to doing any kind of franchising of the game, basically competing at the highest levels with the biggest brands. And so One Tap is the first game that we just released. We released it in beta.
So this might be obvious because what's so interesting about y'all is you almost come from Web3. You come from Web3 as much as you come from gaming. Let me put it that way. I mean, John, you talk about this, like you personally come from it sounds like the tech and blockchain side, maybe even more than you come from gaming, though you have this family history. So already, obviously, that sets you up to differentiate any game you make from most of the rest of the gaming ecosystem. But talking about One Tap in particular, it's a first-person shooter. Spell out, like, how is this different from maybe your typical first-person shooters? And on a tactical level, like, how does the blockchain come in to really differentiate this?
Yeah, for sure. So we actually came up with this idea a while ago where we kind of, okay, so we love Pokemon. Like, we are insanely crazy in love with the game Pokemon and every aspect of it, the collections, the gaming, the different versions. And so when we thought about what we wanted to do, we wanted to build a first person shooter that had that kind of Pokemon feel to it, where you can collect the an item in the game and that item has a very unique value. And not everybody's going to have that item when they go and play against you. It's kind of like you're picking your very specific characters, you're going in and you're doing a battle. And we thought, how cool would it be in a first person shooter environment where it's fast paced, you have to think on your feet, and you're just kind of throwing pets on the fly. And so it actually came out pretty good. In beta, it's absolutely amazing. Everybody who tries the beta now gets to play with the Jaguar, but the turtle's been released, the chameleon's been released, and we're now looking at how these games are being played out, and the strategy on how they're choosing their individual pets has to do with who's their opponent. What did their opponent show them the round before? Did they just have a Jaguar? Maybe I'm going to counter them with a chameleon, and it's starting to become this very strategic kind of game. And then at the same time, you got to have good aim. You got to be able to run away. You got to strategically know how to play like a first-person shooter to really play at that competitive level. And so it just kind of works. It's really fun to see them kind of start thinking about, okay, so if I have this turtle, I can do this. And then if I have this gun, I can use that as a complement to the turtle and, take an advantage here and there.
Okay, and so these pets that you're describing, in case anybody has missed this, these are, I believe you guys call them in-game collectibles, but for the sake of our audience, those are the items that have this underlying blockchain element. So talk a little bit more about this. Like, are these things folks must buy in advance? Is there a free-to-play version of this where there's no purchasing of NFTs in advance? Like, how does this really integrate into the user experience?
Yeah, for sure. Great question. So you don't have to buy anything to enjoy the game. You get one pet automatically, but it's the same one that everybody else has. What you want to really think about with these pets is they are collectibles, but they're kind of like that Pokemon collectible that I was talking about before, where you get them because they have a very specific ability and you feel comfortable working with that ability in the game. But we take it one step further. So because of how we can take advantage of what we're doing with blockchain, we can make them true collectibles, like true digital collectibles, where you can see how many of them exist, right? How many of them exist, how many are in circulation, how many are for sale. Those are values that as a collector you need to know in order to kind of really perceive what's the value of the asset. So on top of that, we use kind of traditional Web3 philosophies around creating unique looking piece of asset. So we call them pets, but that kind of sounds like it's a cat and a dog and a bird.
Yeah, that's where my head first went.
Yeah. But it's more than that. Like, I talk about the turtle, I talk about the chameleon, but there's also a dragon, there's an eagle. I mean, these things are just unique artwork that our team hand creates. And then when we put them out for people to be able to get access to them, there's a limited quality. So for example, the Jaguar that we have right now, there's only 300 of them. That's
limited
it, 300.
Quantity.
Yeah, so you get your hands on one of those 300s. You can think of it like 6 months from now or a year from now, if that's a good piece of asset to have in a match, or it's a compelling piece of artistry, and then you can kind of perceive some value behind it, right? No guarantee that it's ever going to go up or go down. It's all about how the gamers feel about the game, how they feel about that particular utility, and also the artistry. So we'll see how people respond, and if they like it, they like it. And we're trying to keep the pledge to collectibles really at the heart of this game. So we'll never do 50,000 of something. It'll always be strategically very limited. Balancing
those essentially like in-game economics, like understanding that this has that almost like economic component, though understanding it not in a speculative number go up kind of a way. These are, so I know the game is in beta right now, correct? And people can join a private beta. Are the in-game collectibles. Are the pets available right now for folks to start trading, and they're live on the Immutable Marketplace, is my understanding?
They are. Please go check them out. We did something really cool. So we had a lot of great people following us from the beginning, since we announced this project. And so we did what's called an egg drop, or what we call an egg drop. And we minted 3 eggs for each of the 3 pets that we first released. And then we did free mints based on like a waitlist system and a whitelisting system. And so if you own those 3 eggs, you could just go to our website and you trade them in for the pet. And honestly, the chameleon right now is super affordable. Like, you can't buy the chameleon for more or less than $20, but you could buy 3 chameleon eggs for like $2.50, right? So definitely go and check it out. Take advantage of those egg systems right now. I think those are big values.
That's great. And I think it's so important, as just taking a step back in the broader, let's call it blockchain industry, that people do start to realize that like these should be accessible price points. Sure, like in any gaming environment, we're going to talk about CSGO, I think, in a minute. You've got something that'll sell for $400,000. That is an outlier, right? Like, these should be things that people can actually participate in and come and join and enjoy and trade. And it's not what people maybe think of the NFT ecosystem as being, which is just these like crazy high valuations for crazily useless, JPEGs. And so I appreciate that you call that out, that there's like accessible price points for things. And that's
for sure.
That's a positive. Sure. Yeah. Awesome. So I just referenced CSGO. I assume y'all play that game probably. It's a prominent first-person shooter, certainly. I'm curious what you think of maybe Valve right now. I mean, do you think that they'll always be so anti-NFT, anti-crypto? Is anything you're doing at all a sort of a reaction to the fact that they've been so clamped down, and this is an opportunity to present a first-person shooter that's super integrated to blockchain? How do you think about them and their ecosystem?
I think when you have a winning model, it's very hard for you to just embrace change immediately. But and I'm not in those trenches with them making those big decisions, but I do know that a lot of big companies that have not embraced, emerging technologies have sometimes kind of regretted that. So I have a feeling that this is kind of be one of those things that eventually they're going to have to make these decisions to be a part of what consumers are going to demand in regards to these digital assets, right? I mean, their digital assets are much more in abundance, so they do things like 50, 100, 200,000 of a specific piece. So it's less about the collection and more about the in-game visibility of it all.
Right.
But there's enough community, especially with that one, and there's enough rarity that they have in there where they've sparked up secondary markets already, right? And so I think it would make things a lot easier, and I think eventually consumers will demand it, so they can kind of engage themselves in the game so much more. Like, gaming is so different. Like we're not playing Pac-Man anymore. We're playing games where like the artistry behind these things are so elaborate and important to us, and we just love the games, and we love everything about them. Now we watch even the shows that they come out on Netflix. I mean, we're so involved in these storylines and these assets that, we want to be able to trade and buy them and sell them, just like we do comic books or trading cards, right? So I think it's inevitable.
Once players get a taste of getting to capture more of the value of these systems, they're not going to go back. But we gotta cross that barrier at some point, and we're not fully there yet. I appreciate that. I think it's a very realistic approach. They've got a system that's working very well for them right now. It makes sense. They're not looking to upend it in the short term, but the revolution is coming, so to speak.
For the larger Web 2, gaming companies, if you will, and brands, I mean, it's kind of an inevitable thing where, they are looking into it and they all know about it, but it's slow moving, right? Because they've already built such a brand community that, they need to cater to. So it's kind of hard to just switch over and implement some big changes, right? Especially with their assets. But how the gamers are now taking and receiving, like, I guess, feedback about NFTs and, and in-game assets in regards to Web3. I think it's one of those things, like you said, was, it's going to be an eventual thing. They're going to have to find some games where they'll like to play, and then they'll slowly integrate and learn to love it, right? It's kind of like how they did with free to play back in the day. Everyone
Yeah.
hated free to play, and now we see it
Yeah.
everywhere.
Totally. I'm also curious how you feel you approach game development differently, being an indie studio, perhaps an indie studio operating within Web3, as opposed to a triple A studio. Like, what do you think? How does your approach differ? I would say.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we're very traditional. So we have a good sized team of engineers that are working in the game, and at the head of those teams, we have people who have been working on games for 10 plus years, some of them dedicated to first person shooters. So when they develop our game and we work, to create all the artistry and all the mechanics and create all the plans and all the meetings that we do every day, I would imagine it's very traditional to
Mm.
any game really, that it's at this caliber, right? So we have a first person shooter. It's not a card game. It's not like a simple game. It's kind of cool and advanced. So I think though what we do differently is more about the Web3. So
Mm.
in Web3 we're a little bit closer when it comes to community. So those of us who are part of Immutable, for example, we all know each other. We all interact with each other. When we do something online, we tend to kind of flock to it, and it allows us to interact a little bit closer, and it also allows us to grow much faster, right? Now, the difference is we also need to cater to this audience. And so we allow them to give us more feedback, more direct feedback, things that feel a little bit more personal, right? So I was just on Discord last night, for example, and right now we're lucky and we're growing. We're getting about 100 to 300 new gamers every day. And so yesterday an influx of gamers came in, and they were just like, I love this game, but I wish that the sniper rifle was able to pop off a little bit this way and that way. And we're like, okay, we're just taking notes like that. We take
Yeah.
everything everybody says seriously, and I think that's the biggest difference.
Yeah, that super community orientation, that accessibility, that transparency that you were describing up top, the idea that how many items are out there in total, like just the transparency. Yes, you have it by nature through the blockchain tech, but it sounds like bringing that into even how the development process happens by making yourselves accessible and being transparent even as a team in how you're developing this.
No, exactly. Yeah.
You mentioned working with Immutable. I'm curious why you chose Immutable as the chain to build on, or layer two, I suppose, to build on.
Yeah, no, I want to, make sure that I say to all the other chains that has nothing to do with them. It has to do with our understanding and ability to work within blockchain. So, we have maybe it's an advantage, disadvantage, but we've worked with so many protocols, or I've personally worked with a lot of different protocols, and I found that working with Immutable and working with their team and their documentation was very simple and very straightforward. And then we can't leave out the gasless system. That's probably also a really big thing. Like our customers don't have to worry about paying for gas fees. That actually also opens us up to work with a lot of third-party wallets, which kind of allows us to integrate easier into like this Web 2 environments where you log in with things like Gmail or Apple or whatever, and those wallets are automatically connected to Immutable, and we don't have to worry about those wallets having to have any top up because they have to pay a fee, right?
Right.
So it allows us to kind of cater to all the different gamers, those who don't want to play with, those who don't want to learn how to buy crypto and put it into MetaMask and do all that. Immutable allowed us kind of a little bit of freedom to roam around because of the different fees and also the easeability of how their system works, like how minting works and how the
Yeah.
transfers work and how everything works. It was just like a really good fit.
The seamlessness of it, it sounds like. Um, were there any big challenges, not necessarily specific to Immutable by any means, but just as you guys have been developing games and doing what you're doing, like what are some of the biggest challenges or pain points, maybe specific to having to work within Web3 that y'all really had to confront as you were building this?
I think the biggest thing was to kind of convince everyone that we were real, right?
Hmm.
And so in the beginning of the Web3 or the GameFi movement, there was a lot of new studios that were popping up, and and we, even though we were in the background building, we didn't come out publicly say we were doing anything until probably like a year later. And by that time, some studios had already, created different reputations for that portion of the industry, and so we spent a lot of time on branding. And we spend a lot of time kind of creating the trust values around what it means to be a game, be in the gaming industry, and hey, you can trust me. Like you're not going to my website and you're not downloading a virus, right? That's like that's a legitimate concern that people have when originally when they saw us, or we did pre-sales. So if I buy this, will you still be around? A year
Right.
later. Well, here we are, a year and a half later, and we're still around, and it has to do with we're the real deal, and that was probably one of the biggest challenges. Other than that, I think we have the same problems that any other early game has, right? So we got to create the right partnerships, put our marketing dollars in the right place, and cater to the gaming audience and bring in more gamers. And so that's probably everybody has that problem except for like Candy Crush or something like that, where
the
they just kind of take off, saying like,
the anomaly outliers.
yeah, seriously, like everybody wants to be the exception. We're just like everyone else. So,
You're the rule. You're the
so
rule. Joe, anything that stands out to you in this process? Anything that maybe even just surprised you as you helped the team and sort of to build out the ecosystem?
Well, no, I mean, it really is just, when John asked me to help, right, with the One Tap project. I mean, a lot of it back in the day, right? When I say back in the day, it feels like a lifetime ago, but it was like a year or two.
Yeah.
But within
Yeah.
Web3, right? It was just standing out, right, and helping out with the branding and making these partnerships that are long term and, I guess genuine, essentially, right? Making
Mm.
sure we work with the right people. And really just navigating that water was, tough back then and still tough today. But we've made a lot of strides and progress, right? And now, we have a great community, right, playing and testing out One Tap. I myself, I play as well, right? And I still lose because I'm terrible at first-person shooters, but I'm here to support.
You're here to make others feel good,
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I will
exactly.
advise you, and I want to make you feel good about your playing.
I'm like the secret shopper, right? So
Yeah,
I'm in
yeah.
there just, yeah, but
nice.
I'm just here to help out where we can, where I can, and make sure we create a great ecosystem and a great game for everyone to enjoy, right? Because I'm a gamer as well.
Yeah.
Not an operator like John's family, but I did my stunt in playing multiple first person shooters, even my guilty pleasure League of Legends, right? I still play it to this day. But yeah, great games are around, so I just play it.
I'm curious how you see the landscape right now, maybe in gaming generally, the power dynamics between your major studios and your indie developers. And, if you feel like it's a particularly good time or a bad time or neither to be an indie developer. And then the add on to that is how you see Web3 fitting into that equation. Is Web3 good for indie developers or neutral for indie developers? How do you assess that more macro landscape?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that has to do with your game strategy. Like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're a huge studio. It doesn't matter if you're an indie studio. It doesn't matter if you're a guy in your garage just kind of working late night. If you got a good game, you got a good game, and it's always going to work out for you. Maybe, you know, I mean, we sometimes get a little confused with calling the current market the bear market. We say that because we're in the blockchain space, and that affects the blockchain space in general. Maybe it affects those who are trying to fundraise, but it doesn't affect gamers, and it doesn't affect gamers from playing new games and adopting new games. I mean, I don't know if I would call myself a gamer, but I probably try a new game at least once a month. And that's at a minimum, right? And that's not even like the games that come out that are, like the super mega games that are being advertised to me, right? So that's just how we are. We play a lot of games. We try the games all the time. That's why companies like Steam exist, and that's why hundreds of games go in there every month. It's because people try them. And so I would say, if you're a game developer and you feel like you have a good game idea, it's always a good time. Come on out, bring it out, put it out there for people to play it, and get it done.
It's a great point. The gamers don't care what the price of the Bored Ape bar is. If your game is fun, has no bearing. Well, you're sort of front running, which was going to be my final question, which I want to throw to both of you, John and Joe, which is, what is your advice to other indie game developers who want to get into Web3, want to have a blockchain component to whatever they're doing? What do you say to them?
Honestly, there's a couple of strategies that if you add them to your system, you should get some expert help. So if you're going to have a currency that is on blockchain in your game, you should talk to a token expert about those kind of things, especially if you have no background about it. And then if you're going to have in-game assets, think about how you're going to create value for those assets, because right now is a really good opportunity to use Web3 not only to kind of have a place to store your assets, but also in some occasions you can add royalties to your assets. And so if they are resold, it could be like a little passive income, especially for indie developers, that's huge, right? And so I definitely recommend looking at that strategy and making sure that you at least understand the values of your assets if you are going to put them there. And I recommend putting them there if you can figure out a good value. But if you're going to create like a game where it's got millions of the same skin, probably you can still put them on blockchain as a good storage mechanism, but you're probably not going to get that royalty values out of it, right? So,
great advice, Joe. How about you?
Yeah, I think mine is a bit more general and less technical, right? But Web3 in blockchain technology, right, has so many different benefits, right? But in my point of view, I would say as an indie, if you're an indie dev building a game, really take a look at or put yourself in the shoes of a gamer, right? And use the user journey, right? Web3 in general, and the projects that are building on top of Web3, there's a lot of issues and friction with onboarding, right? My personal, thoughts is Web3 should be in the background, make it more subtle, right? And not in your face, and allow gamers to just play your game, right? And if you do have Web3 components like digital assets, right? Like what John said, make sure that, you really do, get down to do your homework on like what the value is, right? For these in-game items. And social logins, 100%, and it's so much, it's like Web 2, right? Everything's so convenient. And Web 3 is not convenient. It's pretty complex. And we just need to take a step back, let people just enjoy the game and not have to go through like 30 hoops, right? Before they play. And that's my advice.
Love it. John, Joe, thank you so much for joining us. Tell folks where they can go to learn more about OneTap and Qorbi.
Yeah, to learn more about Qorbi World, you can go to qorbiworld.com. That's QORBI world.com. Or if you want to play
QORBI. We'll put it in the show notes, but just to be clear.
Yeah.
In the caption somewhere, right?
Yeah, for sure. Please. And then OneTap has its own website. So to get access to the game, you can go to playoneTap.com. And currently there is a wait list, but we are every day we're choosing new people from the wait list to come in. So please sign up for that wait list, and I'm sure you'll get a message from us shortly.
Fantastic. Thanks so much.